keynote speaker there. And when I heard the keynote speaker speak, I couldn't write notes fast enough. But I want to introduce Mr. Scott Spackey. Here's Scott Spackey, and we're very fortunate to have him. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And what a great introduction. You know, I don't know who she's talking about, but I want to meet him too. That sounds great. I've helped a lot of addicts I've never met before in person, never spoke to on the phone, never had any personal one-on-one contact with. I've helped them vicariously by coaching and teaching and training families so that they knew how to react and how not to react appropriately to get the results to save someone's life, and not just their physical life, to salvage their spirit and to restore a family back to unity and health, which is exactly what addiction robs from you: your unity, your health, your wellness. Addiction is not a disease. Cancer is a disease. Leukemia, polio is a disease. The mental health community has accepted a long time ago the term disorder for defects and affectations of the mind and mood. It may seem like I'm splitting hairs. Disorder, disease, it's still a problem. It's 1990, 1991. I'm sitting on a curb in front of my apartment building near Newport Beach in Santa Ana Heights. It's about 6 in the morning. I'd been up for about 3-4 days. I'm sitting on this curb and I've got my point, which is a dope word for syringe, in my hand. It is so dull, it will not puncture my skin. It is so used that it has little micro burrs that if you did puncture your skin, it will shred you like barbed wire. I'm sitting on this curb and I'm filing it so I can sharpen its point, so I can knock off the burrs, so I can get my dope. I saw myself sitting on that curb as if I was a bird up in a tree. And I saw how absolutely ridiculous and depraved this was. And thinking, well, yeah, it's depraved and sick and bizarre and surreal, but I got a disease. I felt that the word disease gave me a little bit of justification. We all have a subconscious association with the term disease. We think cancer, we think polio, we think leukemia, we think these things that can be treated at great expense for the rest of your life. And even though technically we know that many diseases have cures, we all have this association that disease is kind of a final sentence. And I'm telling you that the addict perspective on an internal, personal level is that the word disease is synonymous with incurable, so why not? And so I'm sitting on this curb and I'm laughing. Gallows humor. So I'm not splitting hairs, disease, disorder. I'm tired of these labels that condition the non-addict community to understand things in a way that's not correct, that all of us in the addict community are silently and sometimes don't know how to say, but that's not it. Someone might say, well, then what is it? I don't know. I mean, I'm just a dope fiend. I didn't graduate high school. I don't know what it, but that's close, but that's not it. This labeling can be irresponsible and reckless and dangerous. Because as I subconsciously accept the hopeless, helpless, endless perspective of this disorder, I won't fight back. And you better fight back, because it's fighting. No one is going to save you. So what I want to share with you partly today, a couple of main topics. The couple that I'm going to go over, you will not hear anywhere else. I can say this with absolute confidence because I am the founder, creator, inventor of these terms. Doctors and clinicians and helping centers, those clinicians need a veteran who's been on the other side of that fence. Here's the problem with that. But unfortunately, what we have is in the rank and file of the helping community is we have a lot of people that are unqualified, untrained, and do not have the powers of insight and communication that this very sensitive, very delicate, very complex issue requires. There's me and a few people that have been on both sides of this fence. I am trained, I am educated, I feel that I am pretty intelligent. That's my reputation anyway. I've got 3 books published, blah, 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 all those kinds of things that validate that. And I also stabbed a needle into my arm for 12 years and lived a criminal life. So what I want to share with you is some expressions that people around the world are starting to develop a vernacular for. The Project Addiction solution is becoming worldwide. And we have our own language. We have things that we can say to each other. It's an inside culture, just like dope and crime, just like families. And so I'm going to share some of that with you today. There are different expressions of addiction. 0, non-addict. There are people that are virtually immune to addiction. There are people that are indifferent and just not interested. There are people that do not have the addictive disorder, and there are people that do. And some people who don't have it instinctively are repelled or not drawn to addictive behaviors and addictive things. Do we have some of those in the room here today? Right? See, now the recovery community wants to squash that and say, oh, no, anyone can be. And yet, they also rail on and on about predisposition. Well, which is it? Take your pick. It can't be both because they're both contradictory. So the first level is that, a non-addict. There are people that are virtually immune, that are indifferent towards drugs. They're not militantly against them. They're not in favor of them either. Some of them will actually even experiment here and there throughout their lives. But they have personal boundaries that they will not cross instinctively. They know what is crossing a line for them. Then we go up to recreational. People who can indulge with vices without developing a need. So we've all met these people as well. And every kid who parties will tell you they're just recreational. And every adult that parties tells you the same thing too. Some of them are correct, most of them aren't. You can't tell which one you are until you are mature and experienced in life, to say the least. Because the denial mechanisms filter and influence your perception. So the person who thinks they qualify for recreational, they might be a lot more. What I've developed along with Project Addiction Solution is an evaluation tool. There are ways to evaluate this, but again, the gray and the tricky area is the fact that no matter what somebody feels that they qualify and what category as they study my material, they themselves may not be able to know. You might be able to know about your loved one by following these formulas and really understanding it and studying it because you have some objectivity. It gets a little bit more intense. The next stage is moderate, a stage above recreational. The subconscious brings the desire to mind. Notice I say desire, not drug, because it could be gambling, it could be shopping, it could be anything. When I say DOC, drug of choice, I'm referring to any drug or behavioral focal point. So the moderate is that stage above recreation. The subconscious brings the desire to mind spontaneously and they anticipate using, looking forward to it. Moderate users can override the desire and will not overly compromise other values, but will occasionally have episodes of excess. Most people kind of fall into this category. We live in a very vice-driven culture globally, do we not? So sure, most people indulge in many things that are not necessarily safe, healthy, whether it's junk food, gambling, drugs, etc. So most people who are not in the more severe categories that we're going to continue to go over fall into that category where we don't have to think about, we don't have to consciously will ourselves to think about the chocolate cake that we're desiring, do we? It just comes into mind, doesn't it? All your cravings, they just come to mind, don't they? You're watching TV, you're kicking back, you're doing something, whatever it is, where did that come from? Well, now I can't live without it. Now I want my cookie. Now I want my donut. Now I want my snack. Whatever it is, right? Good luck trying to drive it out. the more you try to push against it, the more it drives back. Again, whether it's drugs or whether it's shopping, whether it's some junk food, we all have our weak points. We all have our indulgences. The difference is, as we get up to the next level of habitual, is that indulgences are things that we prefer to have. We can take, but we can also leave. Once we get into the habitual stage, not so easy. It's not something that we can just constantly decide to just leave behind. Subconscious brings it into thought routinely now. It is a part of their character. It's what they do. So how can we consciously and intellectually know that something is bad for us and yet willfully participate? I mean, are we stupid? So when anything becomes habitual, now it's starting to get into the country, into the territory into the addictive type behaviors, where they become something that is more conditioned by the subconscious, arising on its own spontaneously. The behavior is now a consistent feature of life, whether it's bowling, whether it's junk food, whatever your vice is, habitual is exactly that. It's something that we do. It's now a part of our personality. Number 4, dependent. Quantity and frequency of use has caused a physical and mental dependence. Physiological, mental, and emotional functions have become reliant on the DOC's presence to perform. And then you see the little note there, it says non-addict dependent. Everyone is vulnerable to dependence, even the non-addicts. Many addicts do experience dependency, but for example, many addicts don't. You would think the story I told you about a kid rubbing a needle on a curb must have had a lot of that. Actually, no. Dumb in a lot of things, but I was pretty clever at my dope. I knew what would cause me those kinds of consequences. And so I was somebody who was able to space out my using episodes just enough where I typically was not going through severe withdrawals for anything. I had some levels of dependency, but nothing that you usually read about. Now we get into the bigger one. 5, compulsory. Compulsions are perceived as a choice, but are not. The pressure from the mind affects chemistry, mood, thought, the entire spectrum of being. They are perceived as choice. The reason I say that people in this room probably can really identify with this, because I bet all of you heard from whatever loved one that brought you into this room together to bond, had somebody saying to you, I know what I'm doing. It's not a big deal. I know there's dangers. You're overreacting. You're making a big deal out of this. I know what I'm doing. It's perceived as a choice. And yet, as that outsider, possibly non-ad, you're saying, no, it's not. You can't see. You've got denial mechanisms in place that are influencing your perception and your thoughts of yourself and your behaviors. Just like we all justify that extra donut or sleeping in a little bit longer than we should, right? Number 6, addictive disorder, AD. Acceptance has taken place. A state of unity with the disorder behavior occurs through acceptance. The addict now perceives themselves as addicts, similar to having brown eyes. It's what I am. There's a surrender of the will. We talk a lot in the 12-step community about surrender. Yes, it works the other way too. Everything has a two-way street, doesn't it? My addict brothers, sisters, whatever you want to call them, it's how we saw ourselves. We lived in a microcosm. There was the world outside of us, and then there was our microcosm. And our microcosm was we were dope fiends. We did not split those hairs. We didn't think it was unreasonable. And I'm not saying that we rejected. What I'm telling you is literally, it didn't even consider to do something about it. Same as, like I said, like having brown eyes. It's what I am. I got brown eyes. I'm an addict. We were dope fiends. It's what we did. It's who we are. We didn't know of ourselves or each other in any other context whatsoever. Everyone I knew was either on dope, getting off of dope, on their way to get dope. That was it. One way or another, it's infused with you. So this is where it starts to get really severe. And then we get to number 7, addictive personality disorder. What's the difference? It's got splitting hairs again. Same as APD, same as AD, but with a wide spectrum of desire objects. The APD will move from one to the next. Heroin to cocaine, to gambling, to work, school. Nothing is done in moderation ever. Anyone want to take a guess which one I am out of those 7?
Number 7.
I don't have a filter. I'm either all in or I'm all out. I'm either indifferent to things towards the point of neglect, or whether I'm getting a glass of water or scoring dope, it is my intense passion. It's all I know. I have tunnel vision. The APD personality will move from one desired object to the next. The way that I stay off of dope is by fixating on other things. I cannot stop being addictive personality, but what I can do is select what my addictive personality vents itself and attaches itself to. I can't stop myself from fixating and obsessing over something. So what I do is I give my addictive personality healthy choices, because it doesn't care. You got a dog here, you got pets, you know, and we all got kids when they're little, same kind of thing. You give that dog a chew toy, you know, and you give them something else, they forgot all about that. I mean, how many of our kids were playing with the boxes that their Christmas presents came in? Right? Because they didn't care, you know? My addictive personality disorder is the exact same way. It doesn't care what it obsesses over. As long as it has something that it can immerse itself fully into, it doesn't care. So when I figured this out, my addictive nature went, whoa, I'm in trouble. I've been able to stay one step ahead of this guy all this time. He just found a secret. We've got to know how it works because it knows how we work. Now, once I realized that my addictive nature didn't care what it was obsessing on, as long as it had something. You know, there's a good analogy that comes to mind, talking about how dogs are with things. I had this puppy when I was a little kid, and this puppy, before it could open its eyes, would walk around with its mouth open until it bumped into something, and it would just start chewing. Didn't matter what it was. Furniture, leg, didn't matter what, just start chewing before it could see. Just walk around, and that's how my addictive personality is. It will just walk around until it bumps into something that it can obsess over, and they'll start chewing. The dog did not care whether it was chewing on your couch or your leg or a chew toy or food. Did not care. So of course, we left plenty of dog toys around. My addictive personality is the same way. So how is this valuable? How can we apply this? Let's be practical. If we're dealing, for example, with an addictive personality, we can give them healthy things to get involved with. Now, it's not things that we might think are healthy or meaningful. You might like music I don't like, and vice versa. It needs to be customized to them. The reason I have rejected all of my offers of working with any type of facility is because I always needed to work intimately with the people that I was helping, because how am I going to prescribe to you what you need if I don't know you? That'd be like if a waiter came up to me in the restaurant and said, "What would you like to eat today, sir?" And I said, "Food." He's going to say, "Well, okay, sir, which type? We got a whole menu." Well, you know, just stuff that makes me not hungry anymore. These classifications that I've shared with you are significant because if we apply the wrong treatment to the wrong thing in the wrong way, we will make it worse. This is what's wrong with our recovery community culture in this world today. They have generic, one-size-fits-all mentalities and treatments towards things that are typically designed by a lot of clinicians that did not walk that walk. This needs to be adjusted. I'm sharing with you these different expressions of addiction and addictive nature because we need to apply the right thing the right way to the right person. Because if we don't, it doesn't do nothing. It makes it much, much worse. Another woman had come up to me and said that she wanted me to try to advise her on how to speak to her child about pot. And I said, "Well, tell them the whole truth." "Oh, You mean how bad it is and how dangerous it is and all that? And I said, sure. But don't forget that it's fun. It feels good. It can make you think about different things in a different way. She goes, wow, that would encourage him. And I said, you better tell the whole truth. Because if you don't, when that kid finds out you lied, trust is gone. And you better stock up on it. Because you're not trying to just win this battle. You're trying to win the war. Treating these things the wrong way with the wrong treatment is a death sentence. Learn these expressions of addiction. Know how we can treat them. They get treated very differently. You know, as I began here with the concept of cancer as a disease, polio, etc. Well, you wouldn't get chemotherapy if you had a cold, right? You get the right medicine for the right disease, for the right situation. Same with addiction treatment. It's not working. It needs to be dissected, and it starts on the ground level. It starts here with the families, and it starts at the roots. As I mentioned to you, I've treated a lot of people around this world. I got a guy in England I've never met. I saved his life. And I don't mean this like, oh, I saved his life, I'm a hero. I'm speaking loosely. I saved his life. He went from smoking crack 3 times, 4 times a week, embezzling funds from a company to do it. I never met the man. He's been clean for 4 months. I work with the family. Why? Because he's resistant. Because it's not intervention TV show with a bunch of producers and all that. Because in reality, they don't show up for it. You got to go to counseling. Or what? What are you going to do about it? Part of the feature and symptom of addiction, denial and avoidance, is a symptom of the disorder. It's not a conscious will. It's interwoven and intertwined with the disorder itself. I've also been invited on my short stay here to speak with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, on Tuesday. And that's something I'm going to be discussing there. We've got to be able to differentiate. We've got to be able to understand the disorders themselves and understand that so much of the resistance, so much of the avoidance, not so much of, all of the avoidance and the resistance that you're getting, it is part of the disorder. But to the non-addict, it just defies logic and reason. Because guess what? Addiction defies logic and reason. The addictive disorder defies logic and reason. That's how it protects itself. That's how it perpetuates itself.